Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Dovid podcast. On this episode, we have the couples counselor Dovid Feldman, and we discuss his lessons from being married for 30 years, finding his feet as a family therapist, the flaws of the Redpill, what is the point of getting married, how marriages can work in the long term, understanding marriage-minded dating, how to raise emotionally healthy children, how he knew he was ready for marriage, his take on divorce and marrying the wrong person, and how to communicate properly in a relationship. And I hope you enjoy the rest of the show. All right, David Feldman, welcome to the Growth Clinic podcast. How are you doing, man?
Thank God. Very good. Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm. So you want to tell us a bit about yourself?
Sure. I'm a licensed family and marriage therapist, and I'm based out of Chicago, Illinois. And I'm in my mid-50s. I've been married for, at this point, 30 years.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I have a bunch of children and some grandchildren, thank God.
Mm-hmm.
And my passion is really helping men and women come together and live together peacefully and with love and respect, and enabling them to build families and have a long-term connected marriage. And I really believe that's something that everybody can do. I don't think it's out of the reach of any person. And people just need to know some basics, how to do it and what's important, what character to develop, some basic skills. And I think that people can have a wonderful life together. Man and woman can live in peace and harmony, as difficult as that may seem.
So at what point in your life did you decide that this was the path for you?
Oh, great question. Yeah. So I started out my journey as a technology entrepreneur. I worked for a couple of companies first, and then I opened up my own business early on in my career. And I still have that technology company, thank God. It's a small business, but it helps pay the bills and keeps life interesting. At some point in my mid 40s, I just got kind of tired of staring at a screen and doing coding and working with digits and zeros and ones my whole day. And I said to myself, you know what, I really enjoy working with people. And there was a whole side of me that I kind of repressed because I needed to provide for my family. I needed a career that was going to take off and that was going to. I have 6 kids. You live in America. You can't just sit back and let it happen. You have to make something happen. So in my mid 40s, I decided to go back to school and got my master's degree in family and marriage therapy.
Yeah.
And I've been enjoying it ever since. So yeah.
So what were the early days like?
In this career or before this career?
In this career, yeah.
Well, it was tough. My early days were difficult because, it's one thing when you go to school and you're presented with all these ideologies and all these theoretical, means of working with couples. And you kind of have to choose how you're going to approach family and marriage, and it was a little tough, to be honest, because I was still, wet behind the ears and just kind of didn't really have my feet on the ground. And it's just a funny story. When I first came to Twitter, I always wanted to work with men. So in 2017, I joined Twitter. I mean, I had a Twitter account for a decade, but I never used it. I reopened my account in 2017 and I typed in, men's issues on Twitter. And all of a sudden I started completely being inundated with all this red pill material. All the big names in red pill material are just like everywhere. And in my naive, perspective, I thought this was, the manosphere. This was what the primary masculine men way presence on Twitter. So I joined that community and, I started tweeting and responding and discussing things, only to find out that my kind of peaceful methods were not appreciated at all. And whenever I suggested that, men take the high road or have a different way of looking at things, or that we should, work together with the wives and stuff like that, it was like met with such disdain. I remember I had gotten into this kind of back and forth Twitter spat with Rollo Tomasi at some point,
Yeah.
and it didn't take long before, he totally blocked me. And it was just devastating to me, because I had thought that, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to like be part of this community. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm going to like help bring healing to the manosphere. I'm going to get involved with all these people, and I'm going to learn a lot, but I'm also going to contribute a lot. And then when I was blocked by Rollo, I was just like, oh, what do I do now? I've been kicked off of Twitter. And that's really where my Twitter journey really actually began, because at that point I decided, you know what, I'm not getting involved in this anymore. And if anything, I'm going to start my own Twitter feed, my own attitude and perspective, and I'm going to kind of redefine for myself and for others what it means to be in a great marriage. And thank God, ever since then, it's been a lot more enjoyable and meaningful to me.
Yeah. So, and that question is, compared to Rollo Tomasi's content, what are like the unique traits between both of you's content?
Well, I mean, I don't want to speak too much about his content. I mean, he's very famous, so people really know. No, in my perspective, I think that there's a lot of overlapping truths between the way I see, masculine and feminine, and the way the red pill sees masculine and feminine. So there's a lot of overlapping truth. I think, though, that when it comes to implementation of solutions and an overall kind of end goal, I think that's where there's a big difference. My end goal is to bring men and women together in a loving, committed, connected, respectful relationship in all those different ways, using things like character development and leaning into masculine traits. And also, when I work with women, helping them lean into feminine traits, whereas to me, the red pill feels much more divisive and much more, let's just say, strategic. Like, it's almost like you're playing a chess game with women, or you're trying to outdo each other, or you're kind of being taught about each other's weaknesses to the negative side. Whereas I have a whole series on Twitter called Escape the Red Pill. And I put one up probably 2 or 3 times a week. It's a tweet called Escape the Red Pill. And I take an idea from red pill ideology, and I twist it around. I turn it around such that we can see the beauty in the differences between men and women, instead of pathologizing or condemning some of the truths that the red pill will bring to light with a side of condemnation. So I like to take that and say, okay, that truth is true, but let's twist it in such a way that we can actually see the real reason why women are such or men are this way,
Yeah. And I think that's true, because I saw a tweet by King David just like 10 minutes before the meeting, where he said that you don't need game for good girls, that all them game things are only for broken people who need healing and all those type of things. And it's exactly what you said. It is less exploitative, and the PUAs, their message is all exploitative and like trying to best the competition, like it's a competition instead of a collaboration.
Yeah, I would agree. And to what King David is saying, I would think that just the name game itself is kind of put offish a little bit, so
yeah. So another thing is, when I speak to people, like people who DM me and all of those things, there are people who have been hurt and all those things, and they are really not interested in getting married, and you have questions like, what's the point of getting married? So now this is my question to you: what is the point of getting married?
Great question. Well, there's so many different ways that we can approach this question. So let's just take a simple one. I mean, obviously, just from the most foundational level, right? If you're planning on having children, so let's just go to the most foundational level. If you're planning on having children, we know that there's no better environment to raise kids than a husband and wife who are married and in a good relationship. That is the ideal scenario to raise children. So if you want to be a father, or if you're a woman and you want to be a mother, and if you want to have children, a cisgender heterosexual couple so far appears to be your best bet. So many people want that, and that's a very natural, especially women. I mean, obviously women want that, but it's a very natural feeling for men even to want to leave a legacy, to give to children, to lead a family. So on the most fundamental level, it's good for you if you're planning on expanding your family. On a more personal level, so not necessarily for the sake of family, but just for the sake of yourself, marriage is the means through which men in particular become adults. Okay. And it's a personal journey that we go on that has no rival in any other sphere. So let's just say you're overweight and you transform and become this bodybuilder. Or let's just say you're poor and you figure out a way to make a lot of money. Or let's just say you're uneducated and you end up sacrificing and going through this whole transformation and get your PhD. Those are all incredible journeys that we go on. They're fantastic, right? None of those develop character like the interaction between men and women in a committed long-term relationship, basically in a marriage. So it's a very, very intense, fulfilling, difficult journey that we take for self-fulfillment and growth. One of the things that I like to say is that marriage is the most difficult personal journey you'll ever take with someone by your side. So it's a personal journey, but you have your wife at your side the whole time. So you're taking it together, but still it's a personal journey. And that only comes through the incredible struggle and beauty of a marriage. So, and there's other reasons too. Like, did you want to say something before I go on?
No, just go on.
Yeah. So another reason, even in a higher level. So we said the first one was for like family and kids, which is beautiful. The second one is like on a personal growth level. It's just the most fulfilling, most powerful personal experience. But even let's take it on a higher level. So even on a spiritual level, right? The whole dynamic through which God created the world is the joining of the masculine and feminine. This is the entire energy and the entire kind of movement of all of creation. And it's the coming together of Adam and Eve, the coming together of two physical bodies, a female and male, not just physically, although physically is also part of it, but joining the higher level chachma in Jewish mysticism. We say chachma and bina, or ma'uban, or just the wisdom and understanding. And there's so many different ways that we describe it in Kabbalistic Judaism, but it's that the upper and lower, it's the creator and the nurturer. There's just this unification of this is actually the energy that propels the world forward. So when we mimic this in our own lives with a woman, we are literally connecting to the deepest, most spiritual energy and source in all of creation. So that's kind of cool.
So in all of this, I feel like marriage has been trivialized today, and there's so many divorces out there. Personally, my parents are divorced, and and they say 50% of marriages end in divorce. So what is your advice to make relationships work in the long term?
Sure. Yes. Okay, great. Well, again, that's a big question for sure. But let's start from the beginning. We don't have to go all the way to the end because we only have half an hour, but we can start from what I call a foundational principle.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the foundational principles that I think sets people up for failure in marriage, which is something I like to work with my couples on, is that oftentimes people view marriage as an extension of dating, right? So you meet a woman, it could be online, it could be at a local event or something like that, or through family, and you start dating and you get along really, really well, and you really enjoy your life with this person. You have long conversations, you connect well, you share similar activities, you have great sex, you just really, understand each other, you're supportive, everything seems fine, like really good, right? And your feelings grow and develop for each other. And, of course, you become, you take it to the next level, you become, of course, exclusive, right? And you move in with each other. You're really developing a life with each other, and then you say to yourself, we really want to take this to the higher level, next level. Let's get married, right? So what's happening here is that we are looking at marriage as an extension of this great, phase that we were going through called dating. Marriage is quote unquote the next level above dating. That's a fallacy. Okay. Marriage is not the next level of dating. Okay. That whole mentality is one of the reasons why people get divorced so quickly. Because in their mind, they're thinking that, the same way that they related to each other before, they're going to relate to each other now that they're married. And it's not true. Okay. Everything changes once you take your vows and become committed to each other. Everything changes. Marriage is not an extension of dating. Marriage is a brand new experience. And people don't prepare themselves for that. So what dating is supposed to really be like is, everyone can do their own thing, of course, but I'm saying it, in my opinion, in my structure of the way things, I think, work. Dating is the opportunity to choose whom you're going to go on the marriage journey with. It's a totally different thing. Imagine that you want to form a band. Okay, you want to get a drummer, a guitarist, a bass player, and a singer together. Right. So you're listening to all these tapes that are coming in, and maybe you're watching some YouTube videos, and you're selecting a bunch of guys. Maybe you all meet at Starbucks to discuss everything. All of that is just a phase that we go through to choose whom you're going to actually, when everybody puts their, instruments in your garage and plugs into the amp, then everything changes. You're no longer listening to YouTube videos and seeing, having conversations about how great things could be. You're actually in a band. And then, of course, that even changes further when you're on stage. It's like a whole different world. And that's exactly, that's just one example, maybe not the perfect example, but an example of what really shifts with marriage. Commitment changes everything. Having a mission together as a couple, children, and choosing to stay together forever shifts everything in your dynamic. And so if you're not prepared for that, if you don't have an understanding of what that is, it's not like dating. There's no exit. There's no way out. If you're not prepared for that, and also the dynamic of marriage, living together and, now trying to meld two lives into one, the sacrifice you need to make to have children, all the different aspects of what it means to be committed to each other over the long term. and even having a goal, how you want to raise your kids and how you want to lead your home and what kind of energy do you want in your home, what kind of spiritual energy you want in your home. All these different things are not really part of the vast majority of people's dating lives.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why you can have people who have dated for 2, 4, 7, 10 years. And within a year after they get married, they get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And you say to them, well, this person knew the other person for 10 years. I mean, what part of them did they not understand? Was there something new that just popped up after 10 years? No, it's not that something new came up. It's just that the whole dynamic within the relationship shifted and they weren't prepared for it.
Mm.
They thought that they were just taking their dating life to the next step. And this was just going to be more of the same, but like even more, let's just say, cooler or more connected. It's not. And so we kind of have this whole thing a little bit backwards. And I think that if people were to focus more on that and more like on using dating as a means to choose the right partner and discuss what life together would actually look like, I think people would have a lot more success.
So in terms of dating and preparing for marriage, what are the things couples need to do to prepare for the marriage that you said it's more serious?
Sure. Well, I call it in a term that I use very common is called marriage-minded dating. Right? So in marriage-minded dating, our primary focus is on character. That's because character is going to be what really separates, successful marriages from very difficult marriages. And when I say focusing on character, I mean things like a person's level of responsibility, a person's level of kindness, a person's level of appreciation, a person's level of humility, right? A person's level of sacrifice, a person's level of gratitude, a person's ability to communicate, a person's willingness to change, a person's willingness to accept accountability, and a person's willingness to forgive. These are just examples. But that's what we're looking for in our partner. That's what a person's work ethic, a level of responsibility, like I said. When I first got married, I got married in 1992. So I guess that's 30 years ago. I had a BA in sociology, which is basically nothing. I had no job and I had no money. None. I think I had like $1,500 that somebody gave me in the bank.
So how did you do it?
Right. But I knew that I wanted to take care of my wife. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I had no idea how I was going to do it, but I knew that it was going to be my responsibility. I knew that I didn't even want her to work, meaning from my perspective, I really was looking to have that traditional home where I went to work and provided for the family and she got to stay home with the children and take care of the home like my mother did. So, I mean, I was in outer space, you know what I'm saying? I was totally disconnected from reality in terms of what I had, but it was the effort. It's the character. These were my values. And I knew how to work. It's not like I couldn't hold down a job. I just, at that intersection in my life, I didn't have one. And shortly after that, I went to computer school and I started making more money than I've ever made in my entire life. Even to this day, within 5 years, I think I was making back then, as an example, back then, it was the .com era. You're too young for that, but it was the .com era. And as a computer consultant, I think I was pulling in, over $300,000 a year back then.
Oh, wow.
Okay. So today that would be closer to probably around $500,000 a year. This was within 3 or 4, this is about 5 years after I got married and I had been building up to that. It was a rough road, a difficult road, but my wife looked at me and she saw character. She saw that I had a fear of heaven, that I had a relationship with God, that I wanted to be a good person, that I was connecting and communicative, and that I was responsible. Not that responsible. I give my wife a lot of praise for her, trusting me.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what we're looking for. And the same thing men look for, the same thing in women. The main things that men need to look for: kindness,
Mm-hmm.
compassion, empathy, accountability, communication, um, a positive demeanor.
Mm-hmm.
These are what's going to make you happy with your wife. Uh, a graciousness. These are things that are going to make you industriousness. You know, um, she wants children. Do you think she's going to be a good mother? Is she attentive to your needs? These are very important.
Mm. So in terms of raising children, I've been writing some threads about mental health and all of those things, and it has brought a lot of people to my DMs talking about how their problems stem from their childhood and all of those things. So from your experience, how do you raise emotionally healthy children?
Impossible. I think the number one factor in raising emotionally healthy children is their relationship with their parents. So it's going to be really hard to raise emotionally healthy kids if you don't have a good relationship with your kids. It just will. You are, as a parent, you are the source of their emotional nutrition. And if you're not providing them that love and connection and acceptance and self-esteem, then what do you expect is going to happen? They're going to start seeking it from other places, and they're going to go outside the home, and they're going to be exposed to the coarseness and the harshness of the world. And that's fine when they have the solidity of their relationship with their parents. But void of that, or devoid of that, they're just, you're asking for trouble. So I think that the relationship with the parents, your relationship with your children, close, is going to be a huge factor. And then there's no substitute for time, for love, for fun, for concern. These are all primary ingredients in creating healthy children.
Yeah. So let's go back to when you got married. How did you know you were ready for marriage?
I like to look at my relationship with my wife as an interest. My wife just wrote a book about our courting and our relationship called God Said What? And it's on Amazon. It came out like a number one new release on Amazon. And we had a very rocky relationship. I met my wife, when I was 17, my parents took me to college, and I'm from Chicago. So they took me to a small liberal arts college in Iowa called Grinnell College. It's a pretty good school. And, I was a good student. And so I went there. And I remember that my father took me in a station wagon, and we pulled up to the dorm I was staying at. And we started taking all of the bags, all of my duffel bags and my suitcases and my book bags out of the back of the trunk of the car. Mm-hmm. And I noticed very quickly that I was the only one taking the bags out. My dad was just standing there, and that wasn't like him. So I kind of looked at him, and he was staring across my shoulder, over my shoulder, towards our dorm. And then he goes like this with his elbow. He elbows me, and he points with his finger. And there was a young woman that was walking down the stairs. I was only 17. And my wife was 18 at the time, and my dad says, "That's the one for you."
Wow.
And it took a while before we actually even became friends. So it wasn't like we became friends right away, but it took a while before we became friends. And we ended up dating each other for about 7 years before we actually got married. Mm-hmm. And during that 7 years, it was mostly off. it was it was only on for certain times, but mainly it was off. We fought like cats and dogs. We had so many breakups, and that's why I like to always give people encouragement when they're dating, because you never know, just because you break up with somebody or just because your relationship takes a separate way doesn't mean that you're never going to get, not what. Then we got married, and we've been married for 30 years. So it's a very interesting story. Again, if you want to read about it, you can get God Said What on Amazon. But how did I know I was married? I knew I was married because I was ready to start the next part of my life. Mm-hmm. The next part of my life was going to be family, and implementing all the stuff I had learned and been educated on. And to that moment in time, I was ready to share myself and take responsibility for somebody else. Mm-hmm. When I reached that point in my personal growth, I knew that I was ready for marriage.
All right. So do you believe in divorce?
Do I believe in divorce? I do feel that there are times that divorce is necessary. Yes. Mm-hmm. I know it's a theological question for many, meaning there's certain religions that do not tolerate mm-hmm. divorce. I think Catholicism is one of them. Mm-hmm. Judaism discourages divorce, mm-hmm. but we accept its place within, life. So, my job as a marriage therapist is to try to keep people together, obviously, otherwise it won't much of business. And thank God I'm very successful. I'm very, very successful. Thank God. My clients do really, really well. I believe in divorce in extreme situations where it's clear that somebody is unwilling to continue participating in what we call marriage. Mm-hmm. So I don't believe in divorce if somebody gets sick or somebody's depressed or somebody's just kind of lethargic about the marriage or somebody's not pulling their weight or any of that stuff. I don't buy into that at all. People get sick or people don't pull their weight. People have checked out of life. Somebody can have a depression and be gone, for a couple of years, but then they come back and, you can still have a family, So I don't believe in divorce for a lot of reasons, but when somebody, what I call, checks out of the marriage, like completely decides, I don't want to do anything to support this marriage anymore. And that becomes like not something that happens to them, that's something that they are choosing. And sometimes divorce is your only option, unfortunately, because marriage, I have a whole Twitter space on this. So if you go to my website, dovidfeldman.com, you can look at the Twitter spaces. Mm-hmm. And one of them is your relationship transactional? Mm. We all like to think, not we all, but many of us like to believe that love is not transactional. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? That means that I love you unconditionally and you love me back unconditionally. Yeah. Right? Who doesn't want to be unconditionally loved? We all do, right? But that's not the way the world works. Mm-hmm. If I'm not pulling my weight, it's only going to be a certain amount of time before, and not pulling my weight doesn't mean that I'm falling in hard times or that I'm unsuccessful. Not pulling my weight means I don't care, and I'm refusing to participate. If a man refuses to get a job, does not care about providing for his family at all, just eats Cheetos and drinks Coke all day, there's a certain amount of time that his wife is going to tolerate that, but it's not going to be forever. He has to pull his weight. There's a transaction here. She didn't marry me. She doesn't unconditionally love me to watch me do that. That's not what this was about. And vice versa. If a man comes home and his wife, is completely in shambles and the house is in shambles and the kids are in shambles and there's no love life between him and her. And again, if there's a sickness or depression or something like that, I'm not talking about that case. I'm saying if this is the new her, she's just decided that, she's done. She doesn't want to do any of these things. She's not interested. For somebody to come up to the husband and say, well, why don't you just love her unconditionally? It's a bit much. Yeah. There is a transactional aspect to our relationships. We have roles, we have responsibilities. Marriage is a mission, And we need our partners to be on the mission with us. And if your partner just chooses, for whatever reason, again, not through hardship or not through mental illness or not through depression or physical illness, but makes a conscious choice that they're done with the relationship, I see a clear case for letting that person go and moving on.
In terms of hard times, like you said, you guys had your marriage, the beginning phases, you had the bumpy marriage at first, you guys quarreled and all of those things. So just tell us how you passed through that phase.
Yeah, very good question. Very good question. Well, at first, I didn't do a good job, to be honest. I made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Part of the wisdom that I share on Twitter is based off of not only my studies in school, but off of my own personal experience. My poor wife. The first thing that I would say is that we need to get clear in our mind that we're in it for the long haul. The closer we are to accepting divorce in our own relationship, the less effort we are willing, the less sacrifice and effort we're willing to put into the game. So one of my first biggest decisions was that I'm going to make this work. Okay. Now, once we start from that point, the divorce is not an option. I have, my wife is a good woman, and I love her, and we're not getting along, but I need to make this work. There's no other exit strategy. That was probably the biggest factor, because once you start from that place, you get strength that you didn't know you had before. And I would say that for myself, as a man, one of the most important perspectives that we need to develop in order to make your marriage work is the willingness to let go of so many of your preconceived expectations on your wife. It's huge. It's huge. It almost got to the point for me where it was like, anything that I was disappointed about, I would just say to myself, okay, if this thing, whether it's ABC or XYZ or elemental P, whatever it was, if I would say to myself, if that thing never happened, or I never got this thing, would I still be willing to be married? And for 99% of everything that was going on in my life at the time and things that I had made a big deal out of, the answer was yes. I would still want to be married if this aspect of my relationship that I was disappointed in never changed.
Yeah.
And once I did that, I empowered myself to let go. I would just say, okay, well, if I'm okay with this happening, although it's disappointing, then I'm going to do myself a favor and just totally abandon the need for whatever it was that my heart or my mind was convincing me was so crucial to my relationship.
Yeah.
I come across this all the time with couples, especially with men. She doesn't do this and she doesn't do that, and I don't feel this and I don't feel that, and she's not respectful, and blah, 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 right? And we weed through them, and it turns out that the answer to so many of those complaints is handled so much better when he just kicks those needs out of his life. He just sheds it like he sheds weight. And what happens is that you're left with tremendous, once you let go of the negativity and all the negative messages you're giving yourself about your relationship and about your spouse and about your life, blah, 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 you're left with tremendous gratitude and love. And you're able to look at your spouse in a completely different perspective and only see the good. So I would say that's like a huge factor for me. That was like a huge factor for me that I was able to do that. And it took a lot of work. But it's worth it, because it doesn't just free you up in your marriage, it frees you up for everything in life. You start looking at the world totally differently. and you start shedding all of your shadow. We call that a lot of this we call in like Jungian psychology is like your shadow work and your childhood wounds, and like you were mentioning earlier, and your attachment issues. Like there's a whole new thing called attachment. That's not new, but it's becoming more popular. Attachment issues and trauma and all these different things, and they're all legit. But for me, the most powerful thing is kick them to the curb. And we have a unique ability as men to do that. Women have a much harder time, much harder time. They can't. So many cases. They can't, but we can. And so when we let go of those negative messages that are holding us down, oh, she doesn't love me the way I need. She's not giving to me the way I want. My marriage doesn't look the way I think it should. I'm not being treated X, Y, and Z. And I'm not making fun of any of those things. I get it. Like, I totally understand. We all want to be treated in a certain way, and that's a beautiful thing. But when we let go of our need for that, you end up seeing her differently. You end up treating her differently. And guess what happens? She actually starts treating you the way you actually wanted in the first place. Unbelievable how it works. Anyway, what do you think about what I'm saying?
Like I'm deep into it. So is there a thing like marrying the young person? Because I feel like when your wife is being difficult and all of those things, it's easy to say, oh, you married the wrong person and all of those things. So what's your opinion about that?
Yeah, it's a great, it's a good question. I just wrote something about this the other day, but I don't believe in married the wrong person, except for in extremely rare cases. I was just speaking to my son and daughter about this the other day. I was actually talking to my wife about this because I just wrote a tweet about it the other day. I said to my son, imagine you're on a cruise ship. Let's take this idea, you married the wrong person, right? What does that mean? It means that, you fell in love with a person and with a woman, and you had a great relationship, and you and her believed in each other, and you proposed. She said yes. You went through the engagement. You got married. Now, 3 or 4 or 5, 7 years later, you guys are fighting like cats and dogs. And this idea comes in your head that you married the wrong person, right? Okay. So I give my son this example. I don't believe in that. Now, I'm not saying that you two should stay married. I'm just saying that I don't believe it's the reason why you're separating is because you married the wrong person. I think it's just because you don't know how to get along. That's pretty much it. Because first of all, you know who this person is. You felt love for this person, and you have been in a relationship with them for 5 years. So what are you talking about? You married the wrong person. But more than that, I like to look at it like this. This is what I tell I believe it's a pretty radical opinion in my perspective, but that any person, any man can marry any woman. And actually have a happy relationship. And the proof to this that I like to say is that imagine you are on a cruise ship, and all of a sudden the ship hits an iceberg or whatever, a big whale comes, and the ship starts sinking. And everybody from the ship survives and makes it to this really big island, except for you and another woman your age. You've never met her before. She's not from your country. She doesn't speak your language. She has no interests that have any interest in you that you know of. Your education level is completely different. Your cultural background is completely different, right? I don't care what is the situation. There is no way that you and her living together on that island aren't going to have a loving, connecting relationship. You will make it work. It's just not going to happen that she lives on one half of the island and you live on the other. It's not going to happen. You guys are going to live together in the same tent or whatever it is. You're going to take care of her. You're going to have babies with her. You're going to make love with her. You're going to, argue and fight like every other married couple does. And you're going to have a great life together, as best as you can on an island. This is no other alternative. And to me, that's a perspective that we need to have when we get married. that it's not about, you didn't marry the wrong person. You married the right person. We just need to make it work, and we can make it work. That's my whole business. That's my whole, I wouldn't even call it a business. It's my whole mission in life. My whole passion is to show people how they can make it work, and they can. And it's not rocket science. There's some basic perspectives as well as some basic character development that we all need to do to have a great marriage. And it's my wish for everybody that they internalize some of the messages that I give out on Twitter. It's not just me. There's some other really great, as you've had many like Leela and Heath and some of the other people you've had on the show that give timeless principles of how to unify man and woman.
So in terms of that, so you're saying compatibility is fluid and you can actually be with anybody.
Yes. Totally.
Yeah.
Don't you agree? I mean, I gave you an example.
Yeah. It's actually very interesting because I have to go back and think about it, because the example you gave is actually very true. And everybody will you will actually find a way to live happily with somebody on an island. So yeah.
That's right. I'm not saying you're never going to have a fight, right? She's not going to like the way you made the teepee, and she thought you cooked the fish, you overcooked the fish every single time. I get it. You're gonna pick her, but you're gonna love her, and she's gonna love you, and she's gonna respect you, and you're gonna honor her, and you'll have a life together, especially if you have a child and the whole thing.
So how do you? I've read in so many places where communication is like the most important thing in marriage and all of those things. So as a man, how do you inspire communication in your partner?
I am not a huge proponent of communication.
Oh, wow.
I believe that people's primary challenge with communication is that they say too much, not that they and that they should, not that they don't say enough. People say too much. People think that because we're in a loving, trusting relationship, I can just say whatever I want. I want to tell you how I really feel, or I want to open my heart to you, or can't we just share each other our truth, right? Like these are all terrible, terrible advice for marriages. Most of marriage communication is not saying something. You cannot afford to criticize or disparage or put down or share hurtful comments. Not in the name of truth, not in the name of being authentic, not in the name of being honest. It doesn't work that way. Your spouse has to believe that you think she's the best thing that ever happened to the universe. That's for sure. And your spouse has to know that you only think positive things about her. Right? A woman walking around believing that her husband is disappointed in her is like a woman walking around with a bag of poison that's slowly seeping into her body. It's not going to kill her at first, but over the long term, if she just feels like her husband, she can't please her husband, he's always complaining about something, or he never really thinks that she's doing a good job, she's gonna wilt away like a flower cut off from its roots. So we need to, in communication, should be primarily focused on praise, gratitude, appreciation, building our other partner up. That being said, if there's something that your partner's doing which is either hurtful or you feel destructive to the relationship, you do need to express yourself, right? But we express ourselves without any blame, without any criticism, without any judgment. I like to look at marriage as what I call a judgment-free zone. The words right and wrong do not belong in a marriage. Maybe the word right, like you're right, not I'm right, but you're right belongs in a marriage. Right? But the words wrong don't. We don't judge our partner, and we don't convey judgment. If your partner is doing something that bothers you, let's say your partner is coming home late every day. So you can say, I know how conscientious you are about our relationship. I know how much you love me. I know you would never want to do anything that hurts my feelings. You're the best wife. When you come home late, it feels hurtful to me because I'm waiting around waiting for you, and it feels like you're disrespecting our relationship. Can we both make an effort to show up more on time? Right? Okay. That was like a mediocre way of expressing yourself. But notice how I'm not judging this person. I'm just saying, when you feel this, it makes me feel that. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm not saying I can't believe you came home late. You don't have any respect for me. People who care about each other don't do that. None of that stuff. So I believe in communication. The other area in communication which I strongly disagree with or strongly come out against is talking about the relationship. There's no faster way of pulling the plug on your love than having conversations about your love. Because in almost every case, when you have the talk, with your woman, everyone's going to walk away feeling less than. I've almost never heard a conversation that people walk away feeling better after getting, after sharing negativity. So I like to say, we live in our relationship, we experience our relationship, but we don't talk about it. There's, like I said, again, if there's something that your partner is doing that's disturbing you, you have to bring it up. If you feel like you need to bring it up, then if you can't live with it and make peace with it, then you should bring it up. But I have a whole, on my website at dovidfeldman.com, I have a whole methodology there, what I call relationship-oriented communication. I have an article called 3 Steps to Effective Communication, which shows you exactly how to say things in a way that's non-blaming, non-offensive, non-accusatory, and will, at the same time, enables you to share your feelings. Very important.
All right, man. It has been a really interesting conversation. So where can people find you on the internet?
Well, the funnest place to find me is on Twitter, at Dovid, Dovid Feldman. F as in Frank, Eldman, Feldman. So that's just my Twitter handle. I'm sure you'll link to it in the notes. I have a great blog at dovidfeldman.com, and I've got a lot of great content there, a lot of free classes and master classes, all about love, connection, relationship, communication, boundaries, everything that you'd want to know. If you are experiencing some difficulties and want services, I've got a wonderful couples program with my wife. My wife and I do working with couples. So whether it's you're married or you want to get married, you can work with us. It's just a fantastic program for you and your partner. And if you just want personal work, you can also just reach out to me, set up a free clarity call, go to my website, dovidfeldman.com, and set up an appointment. And I'd be happy to chat with you and see if working together is something that would make sense.
All right, man. Thanks for coming to the show. Have a nice day.
My pleasure. God bless you and keep up your great work.
Yeah, man. Thanks. You too.
Take care.
Hey, guys. Thank you for coming this far. My self-mastery guide, which shares the framework to stop feeling stuck, is out now. Please check out the show notes to get started. And I hope you enjoyed the rest of the day.